I want to thank Zoe for recommending me, all of you who have helped to arrange this, and La Vida Yena for hosting us. The topic is moving forward with NaCCRA. This is all about you. We want it to become a conversation. Hence, I plan to start with a rapid-fire overview and then open it up to your questions. You can start thinking now about questions, since I think the questions and the discussion will be the most valuable part of this meeting. If we run out of time today, we'll have time later to go into everything deeper. I can also be reached anytime by email. Let's start with a few questions that occur to me to set the context for how you can benefit from having NaCCRA on your side. How many of you have read your contract? Here's an excerpt from the contract my sister signed to move into a CCRC, which in all fairness is not the one that I live in. Quote, I understand and agree that at any time and from time to time, all without notice to me and without affecting your rights or my obligations hereunder, you may alter any terms of the residence agreement or any part of it, including renewing, compromising, extending, or accelerating, or otherwise changing the time for payment of amounts due thereunder, end quote. In this case, when asked by a lawyer my sister was working with, the provider would permit no changes since the contract had been approved by state regulators. My sister decided to sign the contract and move in against the advice of her attorney. How many of you are NaCCRA members? How many of you have heard of leading age? How many of you have a Type A contract? How many of you know what a Type A contract is? I just asked these questions to make clear the high level of trust that residents place in the provider organization. This is a trust business. I'm here to talk about a culture, a dream, in which providers and residents work together as equals for the common purpose of ameliorating aging. Many people find some material complex and confusing. I've tried to keep it simple, but it is complicated. The slides are my teleprompter for the talk. Some people learn best by listening, some by reading, and some by both. You can make your choice. Let's give it a go. Please make a note of your questions. We'll have ample time to delve into them later. Let's get started. First, I'd like to introduce you to my wife and I. You've got me in front of you. The picture there is of my wife, Valerie. Let me adjust this so that you can see the slide a little better. In 1998, Valerie's parents moved to Rivermead in Peterborough, New Hampshire. They were then in their late 80s. We liked what we saw. There were meals, a nice home, activities, and standby care if needed. In 2004, our friends, the Swanses, started looking for a CCRC. We joined them in their search. They moved to Air Force Village West, but we were not eligible. So we joined the wait list for Carlsbad by the Sea, which is where we now live. We moved there in 2006 after 2 years on the wait list. We love the location. You can see a picture of our CCRC there to the right. But we were naive and simply assumed that all was what it appeared to be, carefree and liberating. We, or at least I, assumed that CCRCs are regulated, as are the insurance companies with which I was familiar. I'm an actuary by profession, so my career has largely been in the insurance industry, which is heavily regulated at the state level. After all, the elderly are more vulnerable than most policyholders. What's the situation in New Mexico? The financial issues are not, let's just move this over to the other side here. I think that might make this a little clearer. The financial issues are not as acute as in other states, notably Massachusetts and New York. Regulation of CCRCs is by the Department of Aging and Long-Term Services. The department offers a consumer guide. The regulators are more willing to work proactively with residents than is the case in most other larger states. I suppose that New Mexico is somewhat more intimate in its regulatory environment than might apply in the more urbanized states. New Mexico has a continuing care statute, which is contained in the Health and Safety Code 24 in Article 17. Here's an outline of the New Mexico Continuing Care Statute. The first 7 sections cover requirements before residents move in. Then there's a consumer guide, resident rights, and enforcement. So the approach is one of disclosure. There's a PDF edition and a Word edition, both available online for the consumer guide. Best I can see, they're largely the same. The content is primarily cautionary. Both guides, for example, say, remember, you are not buying real estate. You are investing in a contract for housing and services. Most continuing care contracts are for life, so it is important to determine if the agreement and the community will financially and otherwise be able to meet your individual needs in the years to come. The conclusion is what lawyers call caveat emptor, buyer beware. What are the issues? There are few safeguards to ensure that entrance fees are used for the contract purposes for which you paid them. Providers do not need to consult with residents when undertaking speculative ventures using entrance fee proceeds. Management is accountable only to the Board of Directors and indirectly through the Department of Aging and Long-Term Services to the New Mexico Attorney General. There is no requirement that residents be voting members in the corporation or that they be considered for membership on the Board of Directors. In short, management and financial circumstances can change after residents move in, but the residents are still bound by their lifetime commitment. How might these issues be resolved? Well, NaCCRA believes that the dividing line between providers and residents should be dissolved in favor of commonality. NaCCRA is committed to working with providers to integrate resident expectations with management priorities. NaCCRA favors a regulatory environment in which residents are shielded from loss, especially the loss of their entrance fees, just as bank depositors, insurance policyholders, pensioners, etc., are protected from loss. I should say that that is not now the case. So Air Force Village West, which I alluded to earlier, went from having a strong positive balance sheet to running out of cash and has been in receivership for some time and is up for auction, and it's still unclear how that will all be resolved. NaCCRA New Mexico is actively pursuing protection for residents and the inclusion of residents in governance so that resident interests are heard and understood. Here's the good news. You have responsibly taken action to provide for your own contingencies of aging. You have discovered the joys of communal living and have made many new friends and have discovered new interests, perhaps even new passions. Moreover, the food is tasty and free of the burdens of preparation and cleanup. And the apartments are fine once the stressful task of downsizing is behind you. Why then do so few eligible people choose to move to a CCRC, even with its new name, Life Plan Community? A provider friend is age eligible to move to a CCRC. I asked her why she wouldn't move. She said, "I don't want to live among all old people. I can't afford the entrance fee. The residents are retired. They're not productive and they're not engaged." And she concluded, "The residents simply aren't like me." So why do only 5% of those eligible choose senior housing? It's age segregated. It's expensive. It seems indolent. The senior housing industry needs what NaCCRA advocates. Two simple things: financial security for residents and empowerment of residents. If there's time, and I think there is, we'll take your questions, and the slides are available at the website indicated here.